This is Life as an Outsider. I'm your host, Jake Schneider. Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Jake Schneider, host of Life as an Outsider. I'm here in Northgate Studios. Shout out Northgate for allowing us to record here. It's always a big thank you when we get to use their conference room. I'm here with a buddy of mine, Matt Gibson from Forever Home Inspections. Matt, how you doing today, man?
Good, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing real well. Tell me a little bit about what Forever Home Inspections is.
So, Forever Home Inspection, it's shockingly a home inspection business. We do residential home inspections for transfers, right? You're buying a home, whether it's new construction or resale. We'll come out and take a look at the house from top to bottom and just check it out, make sure that it's all good for you.
It is really important, especially when you're buying a house. I mean, I'm a follower of Matt on Facebook, and I see every Monday, Meme Monday.
Home inspection meme Monday.
Home inspection
Yep.
meme Monday. So
Yep.
if you ever want any funny jokes about home inspection and how important it is, I mean, you definitely should tune in. But why is home inspection such an important part of the home buying process?
Well, anymore, I think it's probably always been true, but anymore, people have outsourced so much of home ownership, right? We call a HVAC guy to fix our HVAC. We call a plumber to fix a leak. We call an electrician to wire in a new light. And so the knowledge base of your average homeowner has shrunk more and more over the years. And so home inspections are actually relatively new. They've only been doing them for a few decades now, but we've obviously been owning homes for a lot longer than that. Mm-hmm. But because in the past, people had a lot more broad knowledge of how to maintain their home. So you walk into a house, you're looking at the house to buy. You know, in the past, you'd have a good knowledge. You'd be able to look around and say, oh, I got to fix this, I got to fix this. But as that knowledge base has shrunk, now you got to bring somebody in who has that wide set of skills and that wide knowledge base to be able to look at it for you and determine the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what I always like to tell people. It's like, okay, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I come in as an unbiased participant, right? I don't have any stake in the claim. Whether you buy the home or not really doesn't make a difference to a home inspector, or at least it shouldn't. Mm-hmm. So I just come in and tell you, here's the facts about the house, and that's it. And then it's up to the purchaser whether they're going to continue with the purchase, whether they're going to back out, or maybe take it to the seller and say, we want these things fixed or cash back, or whatever the case may be. So it's really important to have a home inspection because I have that wide set of skills and knowledge that you might not have, and I'm unbiased. So I'm going to come in and not look at things through the rose-colored lens that a lot of homeowners have, and also not come in and say, okay, how can we get, what can we nitpick at in order to get a better deal on the house? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really key part of the home inspection process and hiring a home inspector as opposed to just, Uncle Jimmy doing it.
Right, yeah. And I think you're touching on something key there, which is that knowledge base of, people that are working on their homes. That knowledge base itself is shrinking, even
Very
though
much so.
I think we have so much more knowledge available,
Mm-hmm.
to people, but the actual knowledge base is shrinking. Why? What do you think about that? Do you think, obviously we want to try and learn as much as possible.
Yeah.
Any ideas why that knowledge base itself might be shrinking, even though the wealth of knowledge out there is growing?
Oh, absolutely. I think that for the last 20 years, 30 years, we've villainized hard work, right? You used to have shop class in school. They've brought some of that back now within what they call industrial tech. At my kids' school, they do industrial tech and things like that. But shop is gone, woodworking's gone. We don't glorify the hard workers anymore. We kind of downplay that. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to go into STEM. Which is nothing wrong with the STEM, the STEM fields at all. But you don't want to be the guy that's making repairs on the home. You want to be the guy that's sitting in an office and doing the computer work and then pays the guy to do the repairs. And so I think we've removed that desire in young people to learn how to maintain their things, because why should I? I can just hire someone to do it. I'll hop on Angie's List and find somebody, or I'll Google and do a Google search and look at the reviews. And so I mean, it makes a place for people like me to come in. But I think it's unfortunate because I think people could really benefit from having a greater understanding of the basic functions of their home.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I even think back to when I was in high school, which is, a decade or so ago, and
Young pup.
Yeah, I know, right? I wasn't gonna say how many decades after you, but but yeah, I remember having woodworking and shop. You
Sure.
know, it was to a much smaller degree than even when my dad was in high school, but
Sure.
there was still a level to that. And I think one of the things that I'm thinking also is it's almost overwhelming. I mean, everybody knows how to do something now.
Sure.
How many of them are actually doing it right? So I think that's
Yeah.
another good point is, you know, don't trust everything you see right away.
Absolutely.
I've done that with my car, and I've taken my car to you before to kind of fix some issues like that. So
Yeah, and I broke something on your car.
that's true. That's true.
But I knew what I broke, so that was a really important part of it.
Exactly. You knew at this moment. You're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Ah, crap.
It's okay.
I'll go on the record, and I'm going to look at the camera when I say this. 5-minute crafts on TikTok is garbage. Do not watch those videos. Do not try those things. The home repair, it's all garbage. Just
They're all
ignore
terrible.
them. They're terrible.
They're all
and
terrible.
a lot of them are very unsafe too. Mm-hmm. Many of those things are very unsafe. So yeah, don't do those.
Yeah, no, those are so stupid. I crack up because I'm watching those. Like, how does anybody think this is how you repair a socket?
Right.
Or the worst I've seen is people decorating kids' bedrooms, and what they'll do is they'll take a hammer and bust a hole in the bedroom, and then decorate around the hole. Like, really?
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. I saw one recently, and what's really funny is I saw it recently on someone else commenting on that. Right, I'm not watching them myself. I guess I'm participating in the system, which is unfortunate. But it was how to fix a drywall hole with a paper towel, and it's garbage, I keep touching this thing. Sorry,
It's all
utter
good.
and complete garbage. And then I went into a home and I saw a drywall patch with paper towel. I was like, well, dang, they're doing it. It's not
Somebody give it a
theoretical
shot.
anymore. Yeah. Oh man.
No, it's that's how it goes. And I have also worked with people who are like, oh, well, I learned how to do this the old-fashioned way, and that's not always the safe way either. I mean, I think of when I was working in construction. Well, we do it this way because this is how it was done, and I'm like, OSHA would say something different about that.
Yeah. There's a fine line there. I mean, coming from, my background before I started this business was construction and management. I've been in management about 15 years before this. And I managed a heavy equipment dealership. I managed a cement distribution terminal, a transportation company. And so I got some pretty varied backgrounds, and I worked with OSHA a lot. And there's a lot of that can be a bit much, right? Like we would have safety talks, and corporate would hand down, okay, this is what you're going to talk about your next safety, and it was how to tie your shoes properly. That's a bit much. That's a bit much. But then there's other things that are really, really important. Like for instance, when I was at the cement distribution facility, which would be 8-9 years ago now, we learned about something called silicosis, and it's where when you're cutting concrete, the powder that kicks up, the dust from the concrete cutting, has silica dust in it, and if you breathe that in, those silica crystals can go into your lungs, and they attach, and they can cause tumors. So this, it's a very serious thing, and so now that I know that, I learned that there. Now when I'm at home, if I'm doing a home repair and I'm going to cut concrete, you better believe I'm going to either wear a respirator or I'm going to wet it down so there's no dust flying. And I see other people cutting concrete. I know, hey, stay out of that dust cloud. I don't want to, die of silicosis. So there's a balance there of learning, good things, and then sometimes it can go a little too far.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think of when I did countertop fabricating. So we had a stone shop, and then we also had a Corian, which is basically acrylic top.
Yeah.
And stone shop was the wet side.
Yeah.
And that's something smart that you want to do. You want to wet the stone down. I mean, we also had exposed outlets and wires right next to the wet shop, which OSHA would have had a field day with that one.
Yeah, ignore that part.
Yeah, exactly. There were parts of it that were great, but anyway, you mentioned a little bit about your background in different areas. So you haven't always been an entrepreneur in terms of owning a business, but you've always been in the sort of management side of things.
Yeah.
At what point did you kind of decide to switch from working for somebody else to owning your own business, and what was that transition like?
It was a long time. I mean, it was, like I said, about 15 years of working in other people's businesses. And I got started when I was, pretty young. I think I was 22, 23. And now younger than that, probably 20. And I was managing a transportation company and just kind of fell into it where the boss quit and they said, well, do you want to be the boss? I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll do that. And then I promptly went and got my bachelor's in logistics management because I'm like, here I am, I'm in trucking, I'm going to always be in trucking. And then I left trucking and I've never gone back. And so, but it was good. The degree was good. I think it has come in handy. So I'm not dissuading anybody from getting a degree, but at the same time, I think there are. I must be part Italian. I'm very hands.
Sitting there talking with your hands the whole time.
Yeah. But also I'm going to put them down here. But anyway, so I was working for these other people, and I worked in small companies. I worked for Lafarge. It was the second largest cement manufacturer in the world at the time. That doesn't exist anymore, but at that time it was huge. So I've been kind of all over the place, and I just kept running into this wall of, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but wall of bad leadership. And there's the principle of the leadership ceiling or leadership number. I don't know if you ever heard of that, where you rate your leadership number and you say, okay, out of 10, I'm a 5 or I'm a 7 or whatever. If you're a 7 and your boss is a 5, then you can never be more than a 5 because you're only going to be as good as the person that's leading you. So if you're a 7 and your boss is a 5 and it's not working for you, then you need to find a boss who's a 7 or an 8 or a 9. I don't know my leadership number. I just know that principle, but I just kept running into guys that I just couldn't participate in their business anymore.
Right.
And finally, one day, I've told this story a bunch of times, and my wife laughs, but finally one day my wife said, Matt, you got to either do something or shut up about it because you're just complaining and it's enough. And I said, yeah, 100% you're right. I got to do something or, put up or shut up. Right. And
right.
So I started doing research for what I could do. What could I do on the side? Because I'm fairly risk averse and I'm not going to just jump with no parachute. I need something. And I found home inspection as an industry. And having the knowledge base that I had already in place, that was a really easy transition for me. I spent several months researching it, finding how to get this started, and finally pulled the trigger, got the training done. Iowa doesn't have any regulations or licensing, so I could have just gone out and said, hey, I'm a home inspector, and just started doing it, but I didn't want to do that, so I went and got certified through a couple different national training companies, and then pulled the trigger and started doing it on the side. And as I saw my time at that last job coming to a close, I just knew that day was coming. I just started doing this number, and by the time that I left that other business, I was ready to go full-time in this, and haven't looked back. I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but I always tell everybody, Lord willing, I'll never work in corporate again. I might, I can't say that definitively,
right?
But as much as I can anticipate, I don't think I'll work in corporate again.
I'm right there with you. I mean, kudos to you on starting that. How long ago was it that you officially went full time with Forever Home Inspection?
3 years, 2.5 years ago.
Okay,
coming up on 3 years ago.
I was gonna say because part of the reason I laughed so hard was I know his wife, and she's a very nice and kind person. So picturing her telling you to, all right, well, do something or shut up is hilarious to me.
She's very nice and kind, but she's very direct.
There you go. That's what you need.
Right? And she doesn't hold her tongue when it's important.
There we go.
Yeah.
But I remember you had actually approached me like, hey, I might be doing this home inspection thing. You want to do it? And my first and still thought is, nope, I don't do heights. I don't do sewers. I don't do a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you push yourself.
But you've been doing it for about 2.5, 3 years now. How is it that you have gotten your name out there? Because home inspection, you already said Iowa doesn't have regulations when it comes to home inspectors that are certified or anything.
Yeah.
Are there regulations put in place that basically say you need to have your home inspected, or is that kind of as a...
No. Certain banks can require it. Like you might get a loan with a bank and they might say, hey, in order for us to give you a mortgage, you have to have an inspection. Mm-hmm. Or certain types of loans, like an FHA or a VA loan might do that. I'm not even sure that that's all the time. I'm not sure if that's a consistent thing either. I don't get involved in the back end bank stuff, right? So it's not required by any stretch. I wish it was.
Right?
I support that legislation. No, I don't. I don't support that legislation. But I not to get. So I don't want to give away too many what I would consider to be kind of trade secrets.
Right.
It really boiled down to relationship building. I didn't want to be the guy that just swung into an office and handed a bunch of cards and shook hands and kissed babies and pretended that I was like a national politician or something. It was relationship building, getting to know people on a more personal basis, and going from there. Because there's a lot of trust that has to be placed in a home inspector, right? We are helping you make what is one of the biggest purchases of your life. Very well may be the biggest purchase of your life. So there's a lot of trust that needs to be placed on the home inspector, and that's why since there is no licensing requirements in Iowa, it can be a very bad experience if you get a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. If you get a guy who just says, "Oh yeah, I can do this, no problem," and he's got no background and no knowledge base, he's going to ruin that purchase experience for you, and really make it a sour one. So, building relationship, building trust with those realtors. I mean, because that's really where the majority of your leads come from, is through realtors. And then the implied trust that goes out to the client. The client says, "Hey, who do you recommend?" The realtor says, "I recommend, Forever Home Inspection," or "I recommend yada yada and so and so." There's an implied trust there. So they needed to trust me, and since I was brand new in the field, I didn't have the, quote unquote experience to have immediate trust. I needed that implied trust from others. So that's what we did.
I think that's one thing that's been so central to so many entrepreneurs I've talked to, is that idea of community and that idea of building up that community. I mean, that's where your fan base comes from, but also that's where your support system comes from.
Yeah.
Having a regular customer, and hopefully you're not having too many regulars as far as customers when it comes to inspecting houses before you sell them.
Yeah, typically not. No.
Yeah, I mean, realtors, that's one thing, but
Yeah.
actual customers in and of themselves, I mean, that's really where your future comes from, is that community. And I think going above and beyond, in the sense of, I don't need these regulations or anything like that, I don't need these certifications, but I'm going to get them anyway, I think that speaks to wanting to provide a better experience for the customer, while also saying, this is somebody that you can trust.
Yeah, there's many different reasons to do that, right? I mean, as a business owner, it's not just about the here and now. It's not about making that quick few $100 today, right? This is a long-term thing. This is how I feed my family. This is how my wife and I plan for retirement. This is how we establish ourselves for the next, I'm 38, so I should have a good 40 years left. So this is how we establish ourselves the next 40 years. So if I go out there and I wing it, and I go out there and I charge half of what everybody else is charging, and I do half the job that everybody else does, how long am I going to last? I'm not going to last very long. That reputation is going to build itself really quickly. And so if I want to be a long-term guy, if I want to be the guy, and it's not just me, it's the business. So I'm always working on my language there, because I won't be always inspecting, right? I mean, I'm going to grow old, and I'm going to need other people to inspect for me.
Right, yeah.
So it's Forever Home Inspection. We want to be the company that everyone thinks of when it's home inspection time. And the only way we're going to do that is by building a base, a network of fans, of people that love our work. And the only way you're going to do that is to be really good at what you do. And not only that monetary, reason, but also as a Christian, as a believer, I believe in doing my utmost, and I believe in doing everything as though I'm doing it for the Lord, right? So I'm going to do my very best because I believe that the Lord expects me to do my very best. And I tell people sometimes in my other business, which I'm sure you'll ask about at some point, the other business, people will ask me, "Can you do this project?" And I'll say, "No, it's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not good at that." Because I would rather do no work than bad work. And I don't want to go out there and half-heart things and just be like, well, see if this works out, and then fail and do a bad job for somebody. I'd rather not do work at all. Build up a skill set, then do that thing, sure, but not go out and just wing it for people.
And that's really where that trust comes in too. That's where you start to establish that trust, is when you're able to provide work that is excellent every time instead of most of the time, and then
Right.
you're still doing some shoddy work every now and then.
Right.
That's really how you kind of build that trust as well. And yeah, you mentioned your other business. Let's dig into that a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this second business that you're working on.
Yeah, so we started Gibson Handyman Services. It's a handyman service company.
Really glad we clarified that.
we believe in direct communication. No, we started that just because housing market is a roller coaster sometimes, and so to have various streams of income, having income diversity is really important. I was let go from a job several years ago, and when I was let go, it just kind of dawned on me, like, that's my only source of income. I just got fired, and I don't have money coming in now. So I didn't want that to ever be the case again. So we started a handyman business just as a kind of a side thing, just to fill in the gaps, and it's kind of developed into something more substantial. And so now we're hiring people and going to make a fully fledged business out of it. But that's where that mindset of being selective and trying to do a good job rather than just doing more jobs comes in. Especially, I shouldn't say especially, but alongside the home inspection business, because we need to provide quality service and not just quick or cheap service, so that people want to work with us again.
Exactly. You're not the one guy that's on the radio all the time, approved by Joe.com. You're not that guy for the car dealerships. Like, you don't want to go to that guy because all he's talking about is, this is what you're going to get for free.
Right.
Just going to get a crappy car that's not going to work half the time.
And a really high interest rate.
Seriously. I looked at him once when I needed a car, and praise God I didn't make that stupid decision.
We're not disparaging that company. Don't
No,
sue us.
not at all. Not at all.
I'm sure he's great.
Yeah. Seems like a really nice guy. I had a buddy that worked for him, actually. He was like, oh, yeah, he's a really nice guy. Shout out David. One of the things that you mentioned is now you're starting to bring people on. You're starting to hire people on.
Yeah.
You're kind of starting to trust people a little bit with your business.
Oh, yeah.
So the trust that people put into you as their home inspector or as their handyman, you now kind of have to shepherd that off a little bit into the people that you hire.
Yeah.
So what's that process like in figuring out, who am I going to bring on? Where am I going to start with this? And yeah, kind of what was that process like?
Yeah. So with the home inspection side, we already have that. So I have inspectors that work for us in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there's a whole backstory of how that happened, and probably not enough time to get into all that. But we have business partners that work with us, that we all work together in the company. And then we have a couple inspectors that do inspections for us. So that was already established for us. But I've, in my business or in my line of work for the last 15 plus years, I've been hiring and firing and all that stuff. So I was pretty familiar with how this all works. So the idea of bringing somebody on board isn't that daunting to me, except for now it is my company, and now our company, my wife's company, and it's our name on these things. And so we've been very, very selective. We pretty much started looking for an inspector immediately. Like, as soon as we went full time, we started looking for somebody because we knew it would take a long time. And we've finally gotten to the point where we've got a guy that's coming on board. Hopefully here in the near future, everything will work out for him to start. He's going through all of his training. And part of that process to make sure that our standards are high was to create a training program that meets a much higher threshold, because Iowa doesn't have a threshold, so we had to create a threshold. And it was basically, Oklahoma does have a licensing requirement. And so it was, well, you got to meet the Oklahoma standard. So we have a baseline that we can work from, and then do hands-on training with them. On the handyman side, it's a little bit different. There's nothing like that, but it's getting somebody who has a certain skill set, and then me and working with him to make sure that he's doing things to our standard of business and holding them to that standard. I would rather not make any money than make money undeservedly. I really would. I mean that. I'd rather go flip burgers than have a guy out there doing shoddy work and my name gets dragged through the mud. This is Gibson Handyman Services. That's got a Gibson name on it, and that means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that people know that we're believers in Christ. And so if he's out there trashing the business and trashing my name, he's trashing Christ's name too. And so we really do have to hold a very high standard to meet all of those expectations.
And in today's culture of looking for people to hire, I'm sure that high standard can almost be looked at as too rigid.
Exclusionary.
Exactly, exclusionary, or I think of some of the places I've worked that have not had high standards, and those are the places with high turnover.
Oh, yeah.
Because once you get people in there whose standards aren't high for themselves or the work that they do, that means the standards aren't high for the kind of culture that they create in the company.
Yeah.
And that's just going to drag everybody else down.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're going to pay bottom dollar, you're going to get bottom dollar people. And not to be mean or rude or anything, but that's just a fact of life. I've been there. I did that. I didn't want to. I was told by my boss I had to. I wanted to raise the pay rates for these guys, but I couldn't. And we had extremely high turnover rates. And at that time, it's been a few years ago, I won't name names and companies and everything, but I would set up 15 guys to come in for an interview, and I wouldn't even bother showing up. I would just tell my assistant, my office admin person, just hire whoever shows. Because out of that 15, maybe 3 guys would show up. Mm-hmm. And so then she'd hire all 3 of them, and then maybe 1 guy would come to work.
Yep.
And he'd quit 2 days later. It just was crazy. And so, you get what you pay for. That's why with both businesses, we don't attempt to be the cheapest people in town. I've had people tell me like, well, so-and-so charges. It doesn't really matter. We charge the price we think is fair for the work that we do. You wouldn't go to a high-end sushi restaurant and expect to pay McDonald's prices.
Right.
That's just not fair to anybody to make that expectation. So why would you expect that when it comes to a home inspector that's inspecting your $500,000 home? Get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I've talked to the lady who's helping us with this event that we're planning and talking about the pricing for that and everything like that. And I think that there is a fine line that needs to be walked of charging what is fair versus charging what is more than fair, charging what is less than fair for the amount of work that you're doing. I mean, for me, if I were doing home inspection, $100 because I'm terrible at it. Like, it's not something.
It'd be worth it.
Yeah, exactly. It would be worth $100. You got it written down. Hey, It was inspected
poorly, but it was done.
Very poorly. Exactly. This guy didn't even go up on the roof, but
yeah. And we're not like I say this, and my wife be like, "Oh, you just told everybody that we're overly priced." We're not. We're very competitive in pricing, but I don't play race to the bottom. Mm-hmm. If someone comes to me and says, "Oh, so and so does it for cheaper," good, go with them.
Yeah.
If that's what's most important to you, I don't think it's most important to anybody. Not really. Are you going to really balk over? Let's say it's $50 difference between the two, but we provide a superior service. Is that really more important? Mm-hmm. On your $500,000 purchase, and you save $50?
Exactly. And I mean, that's why things like Google reviews are so important, and that's why and leaving reviews that are important. I mean, that helps. Very important. That helps other businesses, and that helps other consumers make the right choice when it comes to whatever they're going with, whether it's home inspection or even realtors to find the right home for them. Yeah.
That's why I tell other inspectors that I know, don't play the race to the bottom game. Don't undervalue yourself, because you're undervaluing everybody. You go out there, what doesn't matter what it is, home inspections, whatever the game you're in. Don't go out there and just be, okay, the going rate is X. I'm going to charge X amount below that. No, set yourself right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And be, competitive. Why undervalue your time?
Exactly. I mean, we're built on competition. We thrive on competition. Mm-hmm. That's what this whole country was founded on, and that's what our modern society is founded on, is that sense of competition, because it allows us to make those choices. Mm-hmm. Somebody can go out and make the choice to go with somebody that's X dollars, cheaper than you with work that may not be nearly as good, but that's their choice to make, and I think that's awesome.
Well, we do 2 home inspections a day. We won't do any more than that. I don't know what other people do. I know to a certain extent because I can hear things from other people. But if I can do 2 a day and make the same amount as a guy doing 3 a day, who's better off? I think I'm better off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the clients are better off too because they don't have an inspector who's rushing out the door to get to the next one. Man, I got to get going. I got 2 more inspections to do today. And well, I guess I did a good enough job. I'll take off. You're not doing anybody any favors. You as a client are not getting a good service when your inspector's being rushed out the door because he's got 2 more to do or 3 more to do. I just don't see the point in that. I don't see why anyone on either side of that transaction would be happy with the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking about it from the client's view, like this guy's rushed out. I don't know if he checked this or this. Like he might not have even checked the attic. He certainly didn't find the paper towel that we covered the drywall with. Like
right.
Little things like that.
Yeah.
So it's all about, and it does go back to creating that community too. When people first hear, oh, well, they're charging this much or this much, but then you hear about the people who have used you, for example, as a home inspector and hearing the good reviews about that.
Right.
It all depends on your community.
Yeah, it does. And I never expect realtors or anybody to put themselves out there too far for me, right? To stick their neck out any further than they're comfortable with. Realtors have restrictions on them as far as what they're allowed to, who they're allowed to refer and all these things. There's rules around that. So I would never expect anybody to put themselves in a dangerous place by referring me. But I do know that, a lot of realtors that work with Forever Home Inspection, are fans to the point where they're willing to say, hey, this guy's good. And that's all I can hope for is that level of trust that they're willing to say, he does a good job. He does a good job. I've inspected many homes of realtors themselves, the homes they're purchasing. So if I'm good enough to inspect their house, I should be good enough to inspect a client's house, right?
We're hoping.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, as we start to wrap up, we're talking about inspections. We're talking about, that community. How can people keep up with Forever Home Inspection? Where can we find you? Are you the person that we reach out to if we're selling a house, or do we reach out to the realtor who reaches out to you? Is there a middleman? What's that process like?
Yeah, so obviously Facebook you can Google Forever Home Inspection. You're going to find the Google pages for the Tulsa location and the Des Moines location. It's not a franchise. This is owned by us. And of course, then there's Facebook page for Forever Home Inspection. My personal page is a personal page. It's obviously very closely tied to the Forever Home Inspection page, though. But now, if you're a seller, you're typically not going to be doing the home inspection. That's on buyer side. Now, some sellers will do a pre-listing inspection. It's not very often. But if you're the buyer or the seller, whoever wants to do an inspection, you can go to our website, foreverhomeinspection.com. It's got all of our contact info. We have an online form that you can fill out to start the scheduling process, and it's actually really easy, really big time saver. And I have an admin person that handles all of the scheduling for us, and she does a tremendous job of responding to people very quickly.
Awesome.
Because otherwise, it'd be me out in the field, and nobody would ever get called back because it's just too busy. And you don't want me doing that. You want me focusing on the inspection.
There we go. Exactly.
Yeah. And like this morning, I was just doing one for I'll mention this really quick, but I did an inspection for a guy that I inspected the same house a year ago for him. But his warranty's coming up on the new construction, and he had us do an inspection to check the house over for any warranty issues. So if you're a seller wanting to do a pre-listing, or you're a buyer wanting to do a transaction inspection, or you're wanting a warranty inspection, we can do any of those, along with sewer scopes and radon testing.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember you telling me that when you first started doing that radon testing, that wasn't something that a lot of home inspectors were doing at the time.
Yeah.
And so now you brought that on. You got the sewer scopes. So
yeah.
You've got them fully covered on all sorts of angles.
I hope so.
Yeah. It's awesome to hear. I mean, I appreciate you coming on. When we met almost, 4 years ago, It was the second Sunday I was at my church. I walk right up to the door, Matt's greeting. I was like, hey, I'm Jake. It's my second week here. He told me a couple months later, I don't really talk to people at church all that much, so it's good that you introduced yourself.
I'm trying to get better at that.
Hey, you're doing all right. You own a business now, so
Yeah. I try not to solicit at church, though, I'll tell you that.
hey, good call. There you go. But no, seriously, I've loved seeing the change in you going from corporate and now into owning your own businesses, and it's been an honor getting to know you and your family. It's just been fun getting to know you guys, and I'm really excited to see where Forever Home Inspections goes in the coming future.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, folks.